skinny, fast-talking kid with oversized dreams and even bigger confidence decides, against all logic, that is going to become the best footballer in the world. Before the private jets, the golden boots, the screaming fans, there was Cristiano Ronaldo, a boy sprinting barefoot through Madeira, chasing footballs, chasing trouble, and most of all chasing a destiny only he could see. But how does a child from a place most people couldn't find on a map end up transforming modern football? Well, sit tight, because the story might surprise you. Actually, no, it will surprise. Chapter 1. The Island That Shaped a Legend. Before Cristiano Ronaldo was a global icon, a brand, a record-shattering machine built out of pure ambition and an alarming number of abs, he was just a little boy living on an island that looked like it came straight out of a travel magazine. Madeira, warm, colorful, dramatic, wild. It wasn't the kind of place where most people imagine future superstars growing up. It was the kind of place where old men played cards on plastic chairs in front of cafes, where women hung laundry like they were decorating the air itself, and where children ran around the hills like goats with no sense of fear or gravity. Ronaldo was one of those children, except louder, faster, and about 10 times more likely to make someone shout, "Cristiano, stop that before you break something." The island was his playground, his training ground, and his first audience. Its winding hills forced every child to develop strong legs, but Cristiano treated those hills like personal challenges. While other kids walked down the steep paths carefully, gripping walls like mountaineers, Cristiano flew down them with the confidence of someone who had never considered the possibility of broken bones. His home in Santo Antonio was perched on one of those sloped streets that made every trip outside an adventure, or a hazard, depending on who you asked. The house was small, but it was always filled with noise, siblings bickering, pots clanging, the radio humming with old Portuguese songs, and the occasional thud of a makeshift football ball hitting something it definitely wasn't meant to hit. From the moment he could walk, actually, maybe even before that, Cristiano was moving, running, jumping, kicking. His mother, Dolores Aveiro, liked to say he was born with too much energy, which is a polite Portuguese way of saying, "This child is exhausting but we love him." His father, José Dinis Aveiro, worked as a kitman. He was quiet, gentle, and carried the kind of wisdom you earn from living life the hard way. Their home had little money, but what it lacked in wealth it made up for in warmth and humor. You kind of had to have humor in a house that small, because otherwise you'd go crazy. Cristiano was the baby of the family, the most spoiled according to his siblings, but only in terms of attention, not material things. There simply wasn't much to spoil anyone with. But attention, oh, Cristiano got plenty of that, mostly because he demanded it, loudly. He was a kind of kid who didn't just walk into a room. He arrived, announced himself, moved things, rearranged the air somehow. If the house was calm, quiet, peaceful, someone inevitably checked the clock because they knew Cristiano was about to appear and ruin that tranquility with a football or a wild idea. Madeira's community was tight-knit. Everyone knew each other, and everyone knew the Aveiros. Neighbors saw Cristiano grow from a tiny kid to a slightly less tiny kid with unbelievable speed. Even older locals had stories like, "I saw that boy run past my house yesterday. I blinked and he was gone. I am still unsure whether he teleported." He didn't just run fast. He ran like he was being chased by a future he was determined to reach. Life wasn't always easy. Money was scarce, and there were days when simplicity wasn't a choice but the only option. But for Cristiano, those early struggles weren't berries. They were fuel. He didn't know it at the time, of course. Kids never do. All he knew was that he wanted to play football, and every obstacle between him and that goal simply became something to dodge, outrun, or ignore. His childhood streets were chaotic with life, vendors shouting, scooters buzzing, radios blasting football commentary, and children weaving through it all like they owned the place. And Cristiano? Oh, he acted like he owned the whole island. Not in an arrogant way, but in the way ambitious kids look at the world and think, why not? Every morning, he'd wake up early, not because he was disciplined or focused like adult Ronaldo, but because his energy levels refused to let him sleep past sunrise. He would grab anything vaguely round, a ball if he had one. But honestly, oranges, crumpled paper, or rolled-up socks worked fine, and start kicking. Neighbors complained. His siblings complained. The floor complained. But Ronaldo kept going. When he wasn't kicking something, he was running. When he wasn't running, he was jumping. When he wasn't jumping, he was thinking about football. You get the idea. People like to think legends start with a big dramatic moment, a flash of brilliance, a sign from the universe, or maybe a mystical prophecy whispered by an old fisherman on a cliff. But Ronaldo's beginnings were far more chaotic and much more human. He was simply a kid who couldn't sit still. The island shaped him with its wild terrain, its unpredictable winds, its if you drop your ball down the hill, it belongs to the ocean now kind of geography. Losing countless balls to the slopes of Madeira probably contributed to his obsession with accuracy. If he didn't shoot perfectly, he might spend 20 minutes running downhill after a runaway ball, and then another 20 climbing back up. He learned precision out of pure survival. But it wasn't just the land that shaped him. It was the people, the culture, the community that buzzed with football passion. On weekends, the streets practically hummed with energy as locals watched matches from tiny cafes. Flags hung from balconies. Voices boomed through thin walls. You couldn't escape football even if you tried, which Cristiano never did. At home, his father's role as a kitman added a magical touch to Cristiano's early exposure to the sport. Football boots, jerseys, sweaty shin guards. These weren't glamorous, but to young Cristiano, they were treasure. Object from a world he desperately wanted to join. Whenever his father brought home a story from the club, Cristiano's eyes lit up as though he were hearing tales from another planet. Players, matches, the smell of the locker room, the excitement of the pitch. These moments planted seeds of possibility in his mind. He didn't know how. He didn't know when. He didn't know what path would lead him there. But he knew this. He wanted that life. In fact, he wanted more than that. He wanted greatness. His family didn't discourage him. They didn't fully understand the scale of his dreams. How could they? Nobody aims to become the best footballer ever from a small island whose most famous export was wine. But they supported him. They loved his passion, even if it made him exhausting to live with. He was the type of kid who would run home after playing football all day, burst through the door sweaty and red-faced, and announce dramatically, "One day, everyone will know my name." To which his mother would reply, "Yes, because you never stopped shouting it." Madeira wasn't just home. It was a launching pad, a wild, beautiful, rugged island that taught Ronaldo 3 essential lessons. Nothing comes easy. Not football. Not success. Not even walking uphill. If you want something badly enough, run it at full speed. Preferably faster than anyone else. Dreams may begin small, but ambition can make them enormous. And Cristiano had ambition in ridiculous amounts. Before Sporting Lisbon, before Manchester United, before the fame and the frenzy, there was just a little boy with fast legs, a loud voice, a fearless heart, and a dream bigger than Madeira's mountains. And somehow, unbelievably, it was just the beginning. Chapter 2. The wild, funny, chaotic personality of young Cristiano Ronaldo. Before Cristiano Ronaldo learned how to take free kicks that bent the laws of physics, before he learned how to leap like a superhero doing squats on the moon, he had already perfected one thing: being absolutely, undeniably chaotic. Not in a dangerous way, not in a this kid is trouble way, but in the kind of way where neighbors would look at each other and say, "Where's that boy?" Because if it's too quiet, something is definitely wrong. Cristiano was not built for stillness. He seemed physically allergic to the idea of standing still, sitting down, or behaving like a calm, peaceful child. His energy was legendary, and sometimes terrifying. He had as much explosive power at age 6 as most adults develop after 2 years of gym membership and questionable protein shakes. If Ronaldo had been born in a peaceful forest, the trees would have learned to run. But Madeira was not a quiet forest. It was a busy, tight-knit neighborhood full of noise, color, life, and steep streets that turned even a simple walk into a leg workout. Cristiano embraced it all like a kid whose default setting was maximum speed. His mother said he never walked. He sprinted everywhere. Need to get the remote. Sprint. Need to get a glass of water. Sprint. Need to go to the bathroom. Sprint, with varying results. Need to leave the house. Sprint, usually knocking over one sibling on the way out. To the Avero family, this was normal. To outsiders, it was like watching a tiny superhero powered by sugar, sunlight, and unstoppable ambition. But Cristiano wasn't just high energy, he was dramatic. And for a small boy growing up on a small island, drama was more than entertainment. It was an art form. If you want to understand young Ronaldo, imagine a child who could turn anything into a performance. Losing a game, drop to the ground and declare the universe unfair, winning. Sprint around the street screaming his name like he was a rock star finishing a concert, getting told to stop playing indoors, argue that practicing in the kitchen was essential for his career, being asked to do chores, act as if he'd just been asked to climb Everest barefoot. You know, that kid who turns homework into a negotiation, dinner into a competition, and bedtime into a war? That was Cristiano. But this wildness, this loudness, this uncontainable spark, it was the origin of everything. Even when he played football with the other kids, Cristiano was different. Not just talented, different. Most children play for fun. Cristiano played like every match could be his last, even if the ball was made of socks and the goal was 2 bricks spaced unevenly apart. He played with urgency, with passion, with the kind of intensity that made other kids ask, "Bro, are you okay?" And maybe he wasn't okay. He was hungry, ambitious, obsessed, wild, driven by an inner voice that said, louder than anything else on that island, "Keep going. Keep pushing. You are made for more." But let's rewind for a moment and talk about how this chaotic personality revealed itself in everyday life. Because it was memorable. The time he played football in the house and accidentally invented a new form of destruction. Every child plays football indoors at some point. Cristiano played as if the house was a stadium and the lamp was defending him personally. His mother said she could always tell where Cristiano was without seeing him. If things were falling, he was in the living room. If someone was shouting, he was in the hallway. If the dog was barking, he was in the kitchen. If it was silent, he was up to something and must be stopped immediately. He once kicked a ball so hard inside the house that a glass flew off the shelf. What did he do? Did he apologize immediately? Did he panic? Did he try to blame gravity? No. Cristiano invented a brilliant defense. He said the ball had jumped on its own. His mother did not believe him. His siblings did not believe him. The house did not believe him. The laws of physics did not believe him. Cristiano stuck to the story anyway. Medium white star the time he raced a motorbike. While on foot, there was a man in the neighborhood who proudly rode an old, loud motorbike, the kind that sounded like it was sneezing into the void every time it started. One day, Cristiano stood at the side of the road, stayed at the bike, and said, "I can run faster than that." Everyone laughed. It was a joke. It had to be. He was just a kid. But Cristiano wasn't joking. He was calculating. Once the motorbike started down the slope, Cristiano took off running beside it. His small legs blurred. His arms flailed. His face looked like determination mixed with "I might be regretting this." He didn't win, of course. The motorbike was still a motorbike. But he kept up long enough that the neighbors almost called scientists. Medium white star the time he tried to outrun his own shadow. Cristiano was convinced he could beat anything in a race, even his shadow. He tried different strategies. Running faster, running slower, jumping, running sideways, turning corners, quickly pausing to see if the shadow got tired. It didn't work. But he didn't quit either. Because he was Cristiano. The time he got angry at losing and kicked a ball into an impossible place. Young Ronaldo hated losing. If he lost a game, even a game involving pebbles, he became a 4-foot-tall philosopher. "This is not fair. This street is too small for my talent. My team does not play with honor. I must train harder to avenge this defeat." One time, after losing a match, he took the ball, spun around dramatically, and kicked it with such force that it disappeared. Nobody knew where it went. Some said it flew into another street. Some said it fell into someone's garden. Some older neighbors claim it still hasn't touched the ground. That's the kind of childhood legend Ronaldo created. Medium white star, the energy that couldn't be stopped. His energy was so extreme that sometimes adults tried to wear him out on purpose. Let the boy run up and down the hill. It will calm him. It did not calm him. He reached the top faster than expected, sprinted back down, and yelled, "Can I do it again?" By age 7, Cristiano had already run enough kilometers to qualify for several marathons. Medium white star, the time he talked non-stop about football until people surrendered. Cristiano didn't just play football. He talked about football like a professor giving a lecture nobody asked for. He analyzed imaginary games. He critiqued his friends' dribbling. He demonstrated tactical movements using sticks, stones, and once even a tomato. He forced his siblings to listen to his play-by-play commentary of matches that did not exist. He once woke his mother at 6 a.m. to explain a new strategy he had invented. She got up, listened, nodded, and later said, "I don't remember anything he said. I just hoped talking would make him tired." It didn't. Medium white star, the humor in his chaos. Cristiano wasn't a troublemaker. He was accidentally dramatic. Like the time he tripped over his own shoelace and rolled down a hill, stood up covered in dust, and declared, "The hill attacked me." Or when he told his siblings, "I will score 10 goals today." And they laughed. And he actually did. Or when a teacher asked him to write an essay about his dreams and he wrote, "I will be the best footballer in the world." He wasn't being poetic. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. He was simply reporting the facts as he saw them. Medium white star, the confidence of a child destined for something big. Cristiano didn't have money, fancy toys, expensive clothes, or large home. But he had something better. Confidence so strong it could power an entire city's electricity grid. He believed he was destined for greatness long before anyone else did. And he behaved like it. Not arrogantly, confidently. The kind of confident where you look at a mountain and say, "Yes, I will climb that. Right now, who's coming?" When his mother asked what he wanted to be when he grew up, he said, "A footballer." And when she asked what he'd do if that didn't work out, he responded, "It will work." There was no plan B. Cristiano treated plan B like an insult. The personality that could not be contained. To some, he was wild. To others, he was hilarious. To his siblings, he was exhausting. To his neighbors, he was unforgettable. But under all the noise, chaos, and pint-sized drama, one thing was crystal clear. Cristiano Ronaldo had a fire inside him that could not be dimmed. A fire that made him train harder than the other kids. A fire that made him faster than the other kids. A fire that made him believe in things far bigger than that island, far bigger than that house, far bigger than anything he could see in front of him. Even as a child, he carried something the world would later recognize. An unstoppable mindset. A hunger for greatness. A personality larger than life. We often romanticize the beginnings of legends, but sometimes the truth is more entertaining, more chaotic, and far more human. And with Cristiano, the chaos was only the beginning. If you're ready, I'll move on to Medium White Star Chapter 3, Family Struggles, Humble Living, and the Dreams that Lit His Path. Just say, continue with Chapter 3. You said, continue with Chapter 3. ChatGPT said, here is Chapter 3, written in the same cinematic, immersive, humorous, emotionally rich style as the previous chapters. If you'd like it longer, deeper, or even more dramatic, just tell me and I'll expand it. Chapter 3, The Boy Who Ran Faster Than His Problems. If Chapter 2 was about how young Cristiano discovered the idea of football, Chapter 3 is where that idea begins to move through his body like electricity. This is the chapter where the ball stops being a toy and becomes a lifeline. Ronaldo isn't just a kid kicking something round anymore. No, this is where he starts becoming the kid who needed football the same way flowers need sunlight. And ironically, it all began with boredom. A boy with too much energy and nowhere to put it. Ask anyone from Madeira who knew Ronaldo as a kid and they'll tell you the same thing. He never stopped. Not for a second. Not for breath. Not even in church. Imagine a 7-year-old who, instead of standing politely during Sunday Mass, was subtly performing toe taps on the stone floor as if the Virgin Mary herself was counting them. His mother, Dolores, would pinch his arm and whisper, "Cristiano, stop moving." But all that did was redirect the energy from his feet to his eyebrows. He was kinetic energy stuffed into a child-sized container. A teacher once said, Cristiano was the only boy who could finish a math test early and somehow return it with sweat on it. He wasn't sweating from stress. He was sweating from trying to sit still long enough to finish the test. This energy had only one outlet, football. But it wasn't organized football yet. Not structured, not formal. Not the type with cones and coaches and tactics. This was street football, made-around football. The kind where the pitch is decided by whatever space isn't currently being used by cars, goats, or annoyed neighbors. And it was on these streets that something remarkable started to happen. Cristiano began to run. Not normal running. Not "I'm late for school" running. No, this was running like the boy was trying to outrun gravity itself. His mother used to joke, if he wasn't born to be a footballer, he would have been a postman. No one could deliver faster. The birth of the speed demon. Every neighborhood has that kid. The one who's always first to every race, who sprints instead of walks, who treats every pathway like it's the final straight of an Olympic 100m event. Cristiano wasn't just that kid. He was a kid who made the other fast kids go, "Nah, you know what? I'm good." He ran everywhere. To school. From school. Through alleys. Up hills. Across roads. Sometimes across roads he shouldn't have. Madeira's taxi drivers still share stories about the little blur they almost hit on their way to Funchal. And then came the day that would become playground legend. The Great Sandwich Incident. Cristiano was late. Why? Because Dolores had made him a sandwich, and he insisted on finishing it even though school had already started 10 minutes ago. So there he was, holding the final bite in his hand, staring at the clock, realizing he was going to get shouted at again by the teacher who believed lateness was the cousin of failure. He swallowed the bite whole, took a deep breath, and began sprinting down the winding roads of Madeira. Eyewitness accounts vary, but all versions agree on two things. He moved so fast that at least one old man dropped his groceries, that a dog chased him halfway and gave up because Cristiano was running too stupidly fast. He arrived at school so sweaty that the teacher assumed he had fallen into a fountain. "Cristiano," she asked, "did you run here?" Panting, chest heaving, sweat dripping from his chin, he said the first thing that came to mind. "No, teacher, I jogged." Street games and the early rivalries. Madeira's streets were filled with boys older than him, tougher than him, bigger than him. These kids didn't care how cute Ronaldo looked or how fast he ran. If he wanted to play, he had to prove himself. And Cristiano was allergic to being told he wasn't good enough. The older boys would try to bully him off the ball. They'd push him, shoulder him, try to knock him down. But this scrawny, skinny kid with knobby knees had something they didn't expect. The stubbornness of someone who refuses to be defeated at literally anything. If they pushed him, he pushed back. If they shouted at him, he shouted louder. If they tried to tackle him, he simply disappeared because he was already 5 meters away. He became known as Oa Belinha, the little bee, because when you tried to catch him, all you got was frustration and the feeling that something small and fast had just buzzed past you. The household that turned into a boot camp. At home, things were tight. Money didn't stretch far. The washing machine wasn't always working. Food portions sometimes needed to be shared in creative ways. But the smallness of the house also turned it into Cristiano's personal training ground. The hallway was too narrow, perfect for practicing close control. The couch, ideal for jumping drills. The tiny space between the sofa and the dining table, that was where Cristiano learned how to twist his hips like a snake. His sisters would yell at him, "Cristiano, stop kicking things in the house." He'd flash a grin and reply, "I'm training." "This is not a training ground. It is for me." He would practice stepovas in the living room until he tripped over the carpet. He'd juggle oranges when there were no balls left. He'd dribble past furniture like they were defenders from a rival team. Even the family's poor cat couldn't escape. Cristiano would try his footwork around it, and the cat eventually learned to hide under the bed whenever it saw a round object. A boy obsessed. Football didn't live in his head. It lived in his chest. He didn't want to play. He needed to play. If someone told him, "Cristiano, you've already played for 6 hours. Rest," he would look at them like they had just asked him to stop breathing. He would fall asleep with a ball tucked under his arm like a teddy bear. Dolores once tried to take it away, and he woke up immediately, mumbling, "Mine, ball, goal." Sleep Cristiano was also football Cristiano. He lived for it, and the world around him began to notice. If you'd like, I can continue seamlessly with Chapter 4, building toward his discovery by local clubs, his struggles, his childhood heartbreaks, the jealousy he faced, the friendships, the fights, the moments that shaped him into the boy who would eventually conquer Sporting Lisbon's academy. Just say continue with Chapter 4, and I'll keep the story flowing in this exact immersive, humorous, cinematic style. You said, continue with Chapter 4. ChatGPT said, here's Chapter 4, continuing in the same vivid, cinematic, humorous, emotionally rich tone. If you want it longer, darker, funnier, or more dramatic, just say the word. I can expand it endlessly. Chapter 4, The Island Scrapper, Cristiano versus the world, or at least the local kids. By the time Cristiano hit 8 years old, the neighborhood kids had already split into 2 categories. The ones who were proud to have played with him before he became that insanely fast kid. The ones who pretended they weren't traumatized by being nutmegged by a child half their size. He wasn't a prodigy because someone told him he was special. He was a prodigy because he genuinely didn't understand how to not give 110%. This chapter is about the early battles, the early bruises, and the early "I'll show you" energy that made Ronaldo the fighter he is. The day he challenged an entire team. Madeira isn't a big island, but if you talk to older locals, they'll insist they remember the exact day Cristiano earned his reputation as a stubborn little gladiator. He was playing in a street match where the teams were horribly uneven. Cristiano's team had 4 players, the other team had 8. Everyone else thought this was unfair. Cristiano thought this was a fun challenge. If there were motivational posters in his house, this kid would have ripped them down and replaced them with his own face. The game started, and predictably, Cristiano's team was being crushed. The ball barely made it out of their half. The older boys were laughing, taunting, teasing. Then one kid, older, bigger, probably proud of the mustache he had growing at age 12, said something he shouldn't have. "Just give up, Ronaldo. You're too small." Cristiano froze. His eyes narrowed. Something ancient awakened inside him. He didn't reply. He simply began playing like someone had injected rocket fuel into his bloodstream. He dribbled through players like they were holograms. He tackled boys twice his weight and somehow won the ball back. He sprinted faster than anyone had ever seen a child sprint without being chased by bees. Every time he scored, he stared at the older kid with the mustache with the calm, cold expression of someone who is silently saying, "Remember this moment when I'm famous." Cristiano did not lose that game. No one remembers the exact score, but they all remember that when the match ended, the older boys were sitting on the ground, panting, while Cristiano walked home smiling, humming, and dribbling the ball as if gravity was optional. The growing legend of O Menino da Bola. Kids started saying it first, then teenagers, then adults, then parents, then local coaches. Madeira had a new nickname floating around. O Menino da Bola, the boy of the ball. Not the boy with the ball. Not the boy who likes the ball. Not the boy who's good with the ball. No, the boy OF the ball. As if the ball was part of his body. As if you couldn't separate them even if you tried. It wasn't unusual to see him walking down the street with a ball bouncing off his feet like the world's most talented shadow. It followed him everywhere. Stuck to him. Complained when it wasn't being used. People started recognizing him before knowing his name. Mothers would say, "Ah, that's the one. The little one who doesn't fall when the older boys push him." Shopkeepers would say, "That kid's going somewhere. Either a football club or the Olympics." Old men playing cards would mutter, "That boy, he doesn't run. He glides." Cristiano loved every second of it. Not because he wanted fame then, but because people watching him meant people watching the only thing he truly cared about. The first signs of his obsession with winning. If you think the adult Cristiano hates losing, you should have seen him at age 9. This boy refused to lose even at things he didn't care about. Board games. He'd flip the board if he lost. Card games. He'd accuse everyone of cheating, even if they weren't. Foot races. If someone beat him, he demanded a rematch immediately. Homework. If someone in class got a higher grade, Cristiano acted like it was a personal attack. He once raced a kid who was clearly faster, clearly taller, clearly older. Cristiano lost by what can only be described as a galaxy. What did he do? He trained every day for a week, challenged the same boy again, and still lost. So he trained for 3 more weeks. Challenged the boy again, lost by 1 meter. Most kids would accept that as a win in spirit. Cristiano went home angry, did 200 extra sprints, and tried again the next day until he finally won. This is the mentality he carried into football. This is the mentality that made him unstoppable. The fight that changed everything. Literally a fight. One little-known story from his childhood involves a moment that could have gone terribly wrong, but instead helped define him. During a street match, an older boy shoved Cristiano to the ground. Hard. Cristiano jumped back up, furious. The boy laughed. Cristiano didn't. Cristiano pushed him back. The older boy shoved him again. Now, Cristiano was small, skinny, not particularly strong at that age. But he had something the other boy didn't. Zero fear and unlimited stubbornness. He launched himself into the older boy with the same intensity he would later use to leap above defenders in Champions League finals. The two ended up tumbling into the date, dust flying everywhere. Other kids pulled them apart, but something changed that day. Cristiano realized he could stand his ground against boys twice his size. And everyone else realized, if you push that little Ronaldo kid, he pushes back harder. It wasn't about violence. It was about backbone, about refusing to shrink, about refusing to be intimidated. The kind of fire that would later carry him from Madeira to Sporting, to Manchester, to Madrid, to Juventus, to Al Nassr, and into football immortality. His father's quiet influence. Jose Dinis Aveiro wasn't perfect. He struggled. He drank too much. Life hit him harder than it should have. But one thing no one can deny is that he loved his youngest son deeply. He wasn't loud about it. He wasn't poetic. He wasn't dramatic. But every time he walked Cristiano past the local football pitches, he'd smile and say, "Son, one day, who knows? Maybe the world will know your name." He didn't say it like a prophecy. He said it like a wish. And Cristiano remembered those words every time life felt unfair, every time he felt too small, every time someone mocked his dreams. His mother gave him strength. His father gave him hope. Football gave him purpose. The moment Nuno told him he was too good, Nuno, the older boy who first introduced Cristiano to organized football, thought he was doing his friend a favor by taking him to try out with Andorrinha. He didn't expect Cristiano to embarrass half the players. Picture this. A skinny little Madeiran boy dribbling circles around kids who had been training for years. Coaches staring with eyebrows raised. Parents whispering things like, "Who is that? Where did he come from? Is he allowed to do that?" Nuno watched in awe before whispering something Cristiano would never forget. "Bro, I think you're too good for us." Imagine being 9 years old and your older friend tells you you're too good for your own team. Imagine the confidence that gives you. Imagine the pressure too. Cristiano loved it. Pressure tasted like fuel to him. This was where the idea of leaving Madeira first started forming in his mind, not as a dream, but as a necessity. But before the mainland came calling, before sporting scouts began whispering his name, before the world even imagined who he would become, there were still years of street battles, childhood heartbreaks, tiny victories, and giant challenges ahead. If you'd like, I can continue directly with Chapter 5, where Ronaldo joins Andorrinha, begins his early competitive matches, faces jealousy, and gets his first taste of structured football, all told with the same emotional, cinematic style. Just say continue with Chapter 5. You said, continue with Chapter 5. ChatGPT said, absolutely. Here is Chapter 5. continuing with the same cinematic depth, humor, emotional storytelling, and vivid detail. This chapter is long, immersive, and designed to feel like a film unfolding on the island of Madeira. Chapter 5. School, Scrapes and the Lessons That Shaped a Legend. If Cristiano Ronaldo had been born a normal child, one who calmly did homework, stayed quiet in class, and sat still for more than 10 minutes, this chapter would be extremely short. But of course, he wasn't normal, not even close. Cristiano was a hurricane disguised as a boy, a windstorm with a backpack, a 4'8" bolt of pure electricity who believed sitting still was a form of torture invented by adults to ruin his life. School, for him, wasn't a place of peace or polite learning. It was a battlefield, not of violence, but of patience. And patience was the one attribute he absolutely did not possess at the time. This chapter is all about Cristiano's school days. The trouble, the mischief, the heartbreak, the humor, the early signs of greatness, and the people who unknowingly shaped the most intense athlete of his generation. The boy who couldn't sit still. Teachers, bless their souls, tried everything to get Cristiano to pay attention. They seated him at the front. They seated him at the back. They separated him from friends. They seated him next to girls who were supposed to calm him down. They even tried letting him stand during lessons so he could gain energy. Nothing worked. Cristiano wasn't restless. He was charged. If the classroom had been wired to him, Madeira's electric grid would have had surplus power. Teachers would turn to the chalkboard for 10 seconds and turn back to find him, tapping his pencil like a drumstick, bouncing his leg like a machine, flicking paper footballs at someone, or whispering football stats to the boy next to him. He did not mean to be annoying. He was simply overflowing with something nobody could name yet, ambition without direction. When football became homework, Cristiano didn't hate learning. He hated anything that wasn't football or football adjacent. He liked math if the numbers represented goals. He liked reading if the story had a hero who overcame impossible odds. He liked geography if it involved maps of Brazil or places where famous footballers were born. His notebooks had 3 pages of real notes, 20 pages of football formations, and 50 pages of CR7 brand scribbles long before CR7 existed. One teacher said years later, Cristiano wasn't bad. He just thought school should be optional. Another said, he had energy like a bird trapped indoors. You open one window and he flies out immediately. And fly he did, usually straight to the schoolyard, where the only subject he truly understood was taught. Recess Football 101. The schoolyard matches, where Mini Ronaldo became a myth. Whenever the bell rang, there was a universal rule. You don't walk, you run, because you might get Ronaldo on your team. He didn't pick friends first. He didn't pick the biggest kids first. He didn't pick the fastest kids first. He picked the kids who were willing to pass. He'd shout, I don't need stars, I need workers. Yes, he said that at 9 years old. Matches were played on uneven concrete, slanted ground, and occasionally on that spot next to the fence where the ball always bounced weirdly. Cristiano loved that weird spot, because he somehow figured out how to use it to his advantage. People would watch him score from angles that didn't make sense. Parents picking up their children would stop and stare. Teachers on break duty would whisper, that one is different. The insult that led to his most famous school story. Every legendary figure has a moment in childhood that becomes folklore, told and retold, edited by time, exaggerated by memory, but rooted in truth. For Cristiano, this moment happened in a classroom around age 11. There was a teacher, strict, blunt, old-fashioned. To her, football was a hobby, not a future. To Cristiano, football was oxygen. One day she mocked his Madeiran accent, not in a helpful or gentle way, in a cruel, humiliating way that made the whole class laugh. Something snapped. Cristiano, emotional, sensitive, passionate, stormed out of class, tears burning his eyes. He didn't punch a wall. He didn't scream. He didn't argue. He walked straight home, nearly 3 kilometers, in school uniform, without permission, without explanation. His mother opened the door and found her son crying in a way she rarely saw. That day changed him. That day taught him that people can try to belittle you, mock your background, your voice, your dreams, but they can never control how high you rise. He returned to school the next day, not quiet, not broken, but determined. He began training even harder, running more, dribbling more, imagining the day he'd prove everyone wrong. That teacher's insult became fuel. Years later, Cristiano said, "Maybe she helped me. Maybe without her, I wouldn't be who I am." Pain became purpose. The boy with the fire alarm. Cristiano had one other school reputation worth mentioning, and it wasn't entirely his fault. The fire alarm at his school was incredibly sensitive. We're talking microwave without water levels of sensitivity. Cristiano, being a hurricane of limbs and enthusiasm, had a talent for accidentally bumping into it. He set it off 3 times. 3. Teachers became suspicious that he was doing it on purpose to skip class for football. They even questioned him. Cristiano genuinely looked confused and said, "I didn't even touch it." He had absolutely touched it. Just accidentally, energetically, passionately. Eventually, they moved the alarm higher. Cristiano jumped to test if he could still reach it. He could. They moved it higher again. This time they won. Cristiano left the hallway defeated and muttering something like, "One day I'll jump higher than that too." He wasn't kidding. His school friends saw greatness before he did. Years before Sporting Lisbon, Manchester, Madrid, Juventus, or even a real football contract, Cristiano's childhood friends used to say, "One day you'll be famous." While other kids relaxed, Cristiano obsessed. While other kids went on family outings, Cristiano begged to stay home and play football. While other kids were trying to impress classmates, Cristiano was trying to impress gravity and physics. He didn't say, "I want to be the best." He said, "I have to be the best," even before he consciously understood it. Meanwhile, his grades slowly plummeted. Nobody was shocked, not even Cristiano. At one parent meeting, a teacher said gently, "He is very intelligent, but his intelligence is specific." His mother understood exactly what that meant. This boy was born for sports, not science. But she still pushed him to try. She still made him do homework. She still disciplined him. She still reminded him of the importance of school. He respected her, and he tried. But every minute away from football felt like he was holding his breath underwater. This wasn't laziness. This was destiny arguing with a school system that wasn't built for him. The turning point, Cristiano realizes, is not like the others. One day during break, Cristiano noticed something strange. The kids around him were playing football, but casually. They joked. They played lazily. They didn't care whether they won or lost. Cristiano looked at them like they were aliens. How can you play and not give everything? How can you joke around instead of sprinting? How can you laugh when you should be scoring? He realized something huge. Other kids liked football. He lived football. He wasn't trying to be better than them. He simply was, by nature. That afternoon, he went home, pulled his mother aside, and said, "May, I want to be a professional." Not a dream, a declaration. His mother smiled, half fear, half pride. She knew this wasn't a phase. This was his life. End of chapter 5. The boy who refused to slow down. By the end of his school years, Cristiano had a reputation for trouble, a reputation for kindness, a reputation for hyperactivity, and a reputation for playing football like he was auditioning for the future. He didn't care about being cool. He didn't care about being popular. He didn't care about being the teacher's favorite. He cared about the ball, the street, the next match, the next opportunity, the next inch of improvement. School shaped him, not academically, but emotionally. It gave him humility from embarrassment, resilience from criticism, fire from conflict, confidence from praise, and discipline from teachers who refused to give up on him. And through all of it, Madeira kept whispering, "You are meant for more." Soon, that whisper would become a roar. Soon, his talent would explode beyond the schoolyard. Soon, the world would come calling. But first, he needed a team. A real one. And that's where the journey continues. If you'd like, I'll move forward with chapter 6, where Cristiano joins Andorina, enters the world of youth football, faces jealousy, learns discipline, and experiences the earliest sparks of structured training, told with the same cinematic energy. Just say, continue with Chapter 6. You said, continue with Chapter 6. ChatGPT said, here is Chapter 6, written with cinematic detail, emotional depth, humor, and the storytelling style you've asked for. This chapter marks Cristiano's true entry into youth football and the rise of the legend in the making. Chapter 6. Andorinha, the nest where a legend learned to fly. Before Cristiano became the icon we know today, before the worldwide fame, the trophies, the screams of stadiums, there was a small club with a tiny pitch, a handful of volunteers, and children who played with more heart than technique. That club was Andorinha. If Sporting Lisbon was the doorway, Andorinha was the spark, the ignition point, the beginning of Cristiano Ronaldo becoming Cristiano Ronaldo. This chapter is a story of how that spark was lit, how small beginnings hid enormous destiny, and how a skinny, hyperactive boy from Santo Antonio began reshaping the expectations of a tiny local team. The club with more passion than budget. Tiny is an understatement for Andorinha. You know how some teams look humble? This one looked like humility had moved in, painted the walls, and claimed squatters' rights. The pitch wasn't perfectly flat. In fact, players swore you could lose vision of the ball for a second when it rolled down certain dips. The changing rooms were, let's call them experienced. The equipment was donated, mismatched, or repaired with tape. The nets had holes big enough to turn every game into VAR-free drama. But the heart, massive, unshakable, glowing like Madeira's sun. For the kids playing there, Andorinha wasn't small. It was everything. Cristiano felt that the first moment he arrived. His father's role was more important than people realize. Cristiano's father, José Diniz Aveiro, worked as the kit man for Andorinha. This was no glamorous job. It was washing kits, carrying equipment, cleaning mud, fixing torn shirts, and calming down parents who swore the referee was blind. But for Cristiano, this was magical. His father had the keys to the place where football lived, the keys to the place where dreams breathed. Cristiano would follow him around the grounds like a shadow made of pure excitement. The moment he stepped into the changing rooms, it smelled like fresh grass, old shoes, sweaty shin pads, wet earth ambition, and pre-match nerves. It smelled like home. His father didn't say it often, but the pride in his eyes was unmistakable. My boy is going to play here. It wasn't a prediction. It was a promise. His first trial, the day coaches realized they'd seen lightning. Local trials for youth football aren't usually dramatic. Kids show up, they run around, they miss the ball, they kick each other more than they kick the ball, and the coaches clap politely. Andorinha expected another ordinary trial day. Then Cristiano stepped onto the pitch. Skinny, quick, eyes blazing with determination, a ball glued to his foot. What happened next became Andorinha legend. Coaches watched him dribble through everyone's sprint like someone had pressed fast-forward shoot, like he was trying to tear holes through the net and play with an intensity that didn't belong to a child. The kids trying out with him were frozen between awe and existential crisis. Who is this kid? Who plays like this at 8 years old? Who runs like a wind-up toy on maximum setting? One coach whispered, I think we just found someone special. Another said, no, we found someone impossible. The head coach clapped and said, welcome to Andorinha, Menino. Cristiano nodded like he had been expecting that his entire life. Because he had. The first official kit feeling. Every footballer remembers their first kit. Not the first expensive shirt bought by parents. The first official club kit. Cristiano's was. Too big, slightly faded, slightly itchy, probably older than he was and washed 1,000 times. He slept with it under his pillow the night before his first match. He refolded it 17 times to make sure it wasn't wrinkled. He checked the number on the back repeatedly like a child counting his birthday gifts. When he put it on, something changed in his posture. He stood taller. He walked with purpose. He felt like a professional already. He told his mother, May, this is only the first one. I want many more. He had no idea how true those words would become. His teammates loved him, and feared him. Cristiano quickly became the brightest kid on the team. Not everyone liked that. Jealousy is a strange thing. It grows quietly, like weeds around talent. Some kids admired him. Some tried to match him. Some were inspired. And some just annoyed. Cristiano was the kid who trained hard, arrived earlier, left later, played every match like a cup final, hated losing more than he loved winning, took football more seriously than anyone. But he wasn't selfish. One teammate said, "He passed the ball more than people think. He just wanted to win, and he wanted us to win with him." Another said, "He would shout, but he would also help you get better. He pushed you and pushed himself. He wasn't trying to be better than his teammates. He just couldn't help being better." And that created friction. But it also created respect. Because even those who envied him couldn't deny the obvious. Cristiano Ronaldo was a comet. They were lucky to see him this early. His first Andorrania match, and the myth became real. His debut was not supposed to be dramatic. It was a simple youth match, nothing fancy. Parents on plastic chairs. Kids running in mismatched kits. Coaches yelling things children pretended to understand. Then the whistle blew. And Cristiano exploded. He ran through defenders like they were cardboard cutouts. He scored goals that made parents blink twice. He celebrated with that signature lightning smile that would one day charm millions. One parent shouted, "UI, someone check his age. That boy plays like a grown man." Another parent yelled, "Put 2 defenders on him." A third yelled, "Put the whole team on him." By halftime, Cristiano had scored more goals than some kids score all season. The crowd wasn't clapping politely anymore. They were cheering like they'd just discovered the future. Even the opposing coach said, "That boy, he's going somewhere." Cristiano's competitive streak hit new levels at Andorrania. At home, sporty competition caused minor chaos. At school, it caused minor headaches. At Andorrania, it caused minor earthquakes. Cristiano hated losing so much that he'd cry when his team lost, he'd cry when he played badly, he'd cry when he missed a shot, he'd cry when his team underperformed. He wasn't dramatic. He just felt everything deeply. He wasn't spoiled. He was obsessed. The coaches began realizing this trait made him exhausting, but also extraordinary. One said, "I've coached many kids. Kids who were talented. Kids who were quick. Kids who were gifted. But Cristiano? His mind was different. He couldn't accept anything less than perfection." Another said, "We didn't need to tell him to work harder. If anything, we had to tell him to slow down." Slow down? Ronaldo? Good luck. The teammate who quit because of him. This story is half funny, half tragic, and 100% true. There was a kid, good player, strong, confident. He used to be the best in his age group. Until Cristiano showed up. Within a few months, their positions reversed. Completely. The boy grew frustrated. He told his parents, "I hate it. Ronaldo is too good. I can't keep up." He tried harder. Cristiano tried even harder. He improved. Cristiano improved faster. Eventually, the boy quit the team. When asked why, he said, "What's the point? Ronaldo is on another planet." One coach later joked, "When Cristiano joined, half the kids improved. The other half retired early." His father saw everything. While Cristiano played, his father watched quietly from the sidelines. He wasn't loud. He wasn't pushy. He wasn't a classic football dad. He was just proud. There he stood, a man who struggled with alcohol, a man who worked endless hours for little money, a man whose life had been unkind, a man who didn't know how to express emotions, except when Cristiano played. Then he became gentle, smiling, alive. He washed the kits every night with extra care, especially Cristiano's. He stayed late organizing equipment so the kids had a good training session the next day. He cheered softly under his breath every time Cristiano scored. And Cristiano noticed. Even as a child, he noticed. Years later, when Ronaldo spoke about his father, he said, he saw everything in the beginning. That mattered more than he could ever explain. The day Andorrania's coaches agreed, he won't be here long. There came a day, no specific match, no specific moment, when the coaches collectively understood something powerful. Cristiano Ronaldo was too big for Andorrania. Not physically, he was still small. Not in ego, he was still humble. Not in status, he was still a neighborhood kid. But talent, ambition, potential, far, far beyond what a small Mataran club could offer. They didn't know where he'd go. They didn't know how far he'd climb. But they knew this. Andorinha was only the beginning. A chapter, not the book. A spark, not the fire. And sooner or later, the world outside Madeira would come searching. But before Sporting Lisbon found him, before mainland scouts learned to spell Ronaldo, there was one more stop on the island. A bigger club, a harder challenge, a tougher stage. Nacional da Madeira. And that is where the next chapter begins. If you want, I can continue straight into Chapter 7, where Cristiano joins Nacional, faces real tests, develops explosively, and collides with the first true pressures of competitive football, with even more cinematic detail. Just say continue with Chapter 7. You said, continue with Chapter 7. ChatGPT said, Chapter 7, Nacional, the crucible where talent turned into fire. If Andorinha was the small nest where Cristiano Ronaldo learned to flap his wings, then Clube Desportivo Nacional was the cliff from which he was pushed, the place where he learned not just to fly, but to soar, glide, twist, and terrify anyone who tried to chase him. Because this chapter isn't about beginnings. This chapter is about acceleration. At Nacional, Cristiano didn't just improve, he transformed. He went from that fast kid at Andorinha to the boy everyone on the island is whispering about. This was the crucible. This was the collision with real competition. This was the first time Cristiano realized, if I want the world, I'll have to fight for it. The invitation that changed everything. Nacional didn't discover Ronaldo by accident. Word had traveled across Madeira, carried by parents, neighbors, and defenders who still had bruises from trying to stop him. It was inevitable. A Nacional scout finally came to see him play for Andorinha, expecting a good kid. He left shaking his head in disbelief. Not because Cristiano was good, because he was ridiculous. Too fast, too strong-minded, too hungry, too sharp, too relentless, too Cristiano. After the match, the scout approached his father. "We want your boy." Those 5 words lit a fuse inside Cristiano's mind. And once lit, that fuse was never going out. Nacional was bigger, much bigger. If Andorinha felt like a charming local playground, Nacional felt like a fortress. Cristiano remembered walking in for the first time. The pitch looked massive, almost intimidating. The players looked older, stronger, more confident. The stadium felt grown up, like football wasn't play anymore. It was work. The coaches didn't smile as much. The pace was faster. The standards were higher. The mistakes were punished immediately. This wasn't fun football with friends. This was prove yourself or get out. And Cristiano loved it. It terrified him. It challenged him. It electrified him. It felt like destiny. From the small kid to the smallest kid. Cristiano was tiny for his age, far smaller than the Nacional kids. He walked onto the pitch for the first training session and saw one kid with legs like tree trunks, another who looked 30 despite being 12, another who kicked the ball so hard it made a sound like gunfire. Cristiano looked at his skinny legs and thought, okay, this will be interesting. The other kids thought the same, except their interesting sounded more like, look at this kid from Andorinha. Easy work. That thought lasted about 5 minutes. 5 minutes into training, Cristiano dribbled past half the team, nutmegged the captain, chipped the keeper, and celebrated before the ball hit the net. One kid whispered, maybe not so easy. Another whispered, who is this boy? The captain whispered, I want a rematch. Welcome to Nacional. Training became obsession. At Nacional, Cristiano discovered something dangerous. The more he trained, the faster he improved. The faster he improved, the more obsessed he became. He didn't want to be good. He wanted to be outstanding. So he trained like no child should logically train. His daily routine looked something like this. Before school, sprinting, drills, ball control exercises, juggling until he hit impossible numbers, running up hills until his legs felt like cooked spaghetti. After school, team training, extra shooting practice, more sprints, more dribbling, more everything. Evenings, Still playing in the street practicing skills he saw older players use trying tricks, he invented himself getting yelled at by neighbors for hitting their walls, getting yelled at by his mother for staying out too late, ignoring or yelling because football was life. His mother once said, "He would sleep with a football if I let him." Sometimes he tried, and sometimes she let him, because she knew the ball wasn't a toy to him. It was a lifeline, a future, a promise. The teammates who didn't know what to do with him. Nacional players had mixed reactions. Group 1, the admirers. These skills are unreal. This kid is insane. Teach me how you dribble like that. Group 2, the competitors. I will not let this skinny boy outrun me again. No way. Not today. Group 3, the annoyed ones. Coach, why do we have to mark him? It's impossible. Group 4, the ones who loved him. Cristiano is crazy, but he makes us better. Group 5, the ones who wanted him gone. He's going to take my position, isn't he? One teammate later admitted, I learned more from trying to catch Ronaldo for 6 months than from any training drill. Another said, listen, I loved him, but sometimes I wanted to kick him. Not in a bad way, in a friendly rivalry way. Cristiano didn't care. He wasn't here to fit in. He was here to rise. The first time he felt pressure, real pressure. At Andorinha, if he lost a match, he cried. At Nacional, crying wasn't enough. At Nacional, losing meant something deeper, sharper, heavier. The coaches expected results. The club expected excellence. The players expected dominance. The island expected brilliance. Suddenly, football wasn't just joy. It was responsibility. Cristiano began to understand the power of expectations. You can't hide, you can't slack, you can't take days off, you can't be average. He didn't crumble under this. He transformed under it. Pressure didn't break him, it forged him. Madeira was small. His dreams weren't. Around this time, Cristiano began saying something unusual for a boy his age. I'm going to be the best in the world. People laughed, not because they were cruel, because they thought he was cute. Who says that? A skinny boy from a small island? A kid with second-hand boots? A boy who sometimes couldn't afford school books? Who grows up in a tiny neighborhood and declares, I'm going to be the best in the world. Cristiano Ronaldo does, because he wasn't dreaming. He was planning. The rival match that became legend. Every island has rivalries. Madeira's biggest youth rivalry, Nacional versus Maritimo. Cristiano was unstoppable that game. He played like he had electricity running through his veins. Defenders grabbed him, they kicked him, they tried blocking him, they tried doubling him, they tried anything. Nothing worked. Cristiano tore the match apart. One goal, then another, then a dribble that made a defender spin like a malfunctioning robot, then a pass that led to another goal, then a sprint that made parents gasp, then another run that made the coach yell, then a shot that nearly broke the crossbar. After the match, a Maritimo coach told his staff, someone get Sporting on the phone. They need to see this boy. It was said jokingly, but jokes have a funny way of becoming reality. The academic problem no one talks about. Cristiano was not a top student. Not even close. He wasn't dumb. He was distracted. Football lived in his brain rent-free. When teachers said, Cristiano, pay attention, his brain replied, I wonder if I could learn that new trick if I practice after class. When teachers asked, what is the answer? His brain said, goal. He didn't fit into the classroom mold. He wasn't meant to. His destiny wasn't in chalkboards and textbooks. It was in stadiums and scoreboards. Still, his teachers noticed something revealing. When he loved something, he was unstoppable. When he didn't, good luck. Football, unstoppable. School, moving on. The growth spurt that never came. Yet, teammates were growing like weeds. Cristiano, more like a houseplant that refused to sprout. He was tiny. He was skinny. He was easy to push around physically. And opponents tried. Oh, they tried. But every time they knocked him down, he jumped up faster. Every hit made him tougher. Every shove made him sharper. Every foul made him more determined. One coach joked, don't worry about his size. His heart is 10 feet tall. He wasn't lying. Cristiano played like he was bigger than everyone else. Because in his mind, he already was. The deal that shocked the island. Everything changed when Nacional received an offer. Sporting Lisbon wanted Cristiano Ronaldo to come for a trial. This wasn't just big. This was colossal. Sporting was one of the biggest clubs in Portugal, one of the best academies in Europe, factory of stars, a gateway to the football world. This wasn't a step up. It was a rocket launch. Nacional's coaches were proud. Cristiano's family was shocked. The island buzzed with gossip. A boy from Madeira? Invited by Sporting? Impossible. Insane. Incredible. But it was happening. Cristiano knew this was his shot. Not a chance. A destiny. And Madeira, the island that raised him, was about to watch him leap toward the mainland. Nacional was not the destination. It was the launch pad. Everything he learned, speed, technique, hunger, discipline, pride, resilience, ambition, confidence, obsession, became the scaffolding of the superstar he would become. Nacional didn't create Cristiano Ronaldo, but it hardened him, sharpened him, tested him, prepared him for the world. It was the bridge between childhood and legend, a bridge he crossed fearlessly, because the next chapter, Sporting Lisbon, where boys become professionals, where players become prospects, where talents become stars, and where Cristiano Ronaldo would face homesickness, bullying, isolation, pressure, competition, transformation. Chapter 8 will take you there. Just say, continue with Chapter 8. You said, continue with Chapter 8. ChatGPT said, absolutely. I'll continue with Chapter 8 in the same cinematic, emotional, humorous, deeply descriptive style. Buckle in. This is the chapter where Cristiano faces his first true storm. Chapter 8. The goodbye that broke him and the dream that saved him. If you've ever seen a young bird take its first flight, you know the moment. Wings shaking, body trembling, fear and instinct wrestling in its chest. Cristiano Ronaldo was exactly that. Except his nest was Madeira, and the sky he was about to fly into was Sporting Lisbon, hundreds of kilometers away, across the ocean, across comfort, across innocence. This chapter isn't about football. This chapter is about leaving home, maybe the hardest match Cristiano ever played. The night before leaving, the island that slept, except for one boy. Madeira sleeps quietly. But on the night before Cristiano left for Lisbon, the neighborhood felt different. The air felt heavy, the dogs barked less, the street lamps flickered like they were thinking, the waves sounded louder, angrier, like they didn't want him to go. Inside the house, everyone tried to act normal. They weren't. Dolores tried cooking dinner but burned it twice. His father poured himself a drink to calm down, then immediately poured another. Hugo kept joking around to lighten the mood. His sisters hovered like protective hawks. Cristiano tried to pretend he wasn't scared. He failed. Somewhere between packing his small bag and brushing his teeth, reality punched through. Tomorrow, he was leaving. Not for a weekend. Not for a holiday. Not for a school trip. He was leaving home. Leaving childhood. Leaving everything familiar. He didn't sleep that night. He didn't even lie down. He sat by the window, staring at the faint orange glow of Funchal in the distance, whispering to himself, "You have to do this. You can't stay small. You want to be the best. You have to go." It didn't make the fear go away, but it gave him courage. The airport scene, tays, promises, and a suitcase that wobbled. Morning came too quickly. The family walked into Madeira airport together, the air thick with unspoken emotions. Cristiano carried a small suitcase with a wheel that didn't roll properly, making a clack, clack, clack sound across the tiles. He hated that sound. It felt like a countdown. As they approached the gate, reality snapped fully into view. He was actually leaving. And just like that, the tears came. Not soft tears. Not gentle tears. These were the tears of a boy being separated from the world he loved. Dolores hugged him so tightly he could barely breathe. "You go, and you fight," she whispered through her own tears. "And you don't come back until you succeed." His father, quiet and emotional, put a hand on Cristiano's shoulder. "Make us proud, son." His brother said, "Call me. Every day." His sisters said, "Don't let anyone bully you." Cristiano said nothing. His throat was too tight. When he finally walked away, he didn't turn around. Because he knew If he looked back, he might not go. The flight to Lisbon, fear at 30,000 feet. Cristiano had flown before, but this time the plane felt different. He sat by the window, staring out as Madeira shrank into a tiny green spark behind the Atlantic blue. For a few minutes, he hoped the pilot would announce, "We forgot something. We have to go back." He knew that wasn't happening. Instead, he whispered, "Don't be weak. You asked for this. Work. Fight. Become someone." But his stomach twisted. His hands shook. He was 11 years old, flying alone to a city he'd never lived in, to join a club where nobody knew him. He felt small, very small. But destiny doesn't care if you're scared. Destiny waits. Arriving in Lisbon, the world suddenly felt huge. Lisbon was loud. Lisbon was fast. Lisbon was overwhelming. Cars everywhere. Tall buildings blocking the sky. People who didn't smile as easily. Accents that felt strange in his ears. Cristiano's first thought, "This place is too big. I'm not ready." His second thought, "No, you have to become ready." Sporting staff took him from the airport to the academy, a place that felt like a palace compared to anything he'd ever seen. Fields everywhere. Gym equipment he'd only seen in movies. Dormitories filled with boys who looked like they ate iron for breakfast. And there he was, a skinny kid from Madeira with a suit that didn't fit and a heart pounding like a drum. The first nights, homesickness hits like a tackle. The academy had rules. Curfew, study hours, strict training, no nonsense. Cristiano was used to freedom, not a military routine. But the worst part, the nights. During the day, he could train, run, hustle, sweat. But at night, there was nothing to distract him. Each time he lay in his small academy bed, he heard boys whispering, someone snoring, a distant TV, the hum of Lisbon outside. And inside his chest, the ache of missing. His mother's voice, his father's jokes, his brother's teasing, his sister's loud laughter, the smell of home, the sound of the ocean. A few times, he quietly cried into his pillow. But only quietly, because Cristiano Ronaldo would die before letting anyone see him break. Trouble begins immediately. The boys from the mainland didn't like him. Cristiano wasn't just the new kid. He was the kid from Madeira. To many boys in Lisbon, Madeira felt like a foreign island. They made jokes. They teased him about his accent. They called him Cromo, Z Ningam, the island boy. And Cristiano? He fought back. Verbally, physically, emotionally. If anyone messed with him, he stormed right up to them and gave it back. Once, a boy made fun of his clothes. Cristiano challenged him on the spot. Another boy mocked his skinny frame. Cristiano outran him for 20 straight minutes during training until the boy gave up. They didn't like his fire. They didn't like his ambition. They didn't like his talent. Especially not the talent. Because Cristiano was good. Too good. Dangerously good. And nothing makes young competitors meaner than seeing someone younger and smaller outshine them. Training level, insane. Emotion level, chaos. Pressure level, maximum. Sporting's academy wasn't a joke. It was an elite machine. Every day felt like running until your lungs burned, drills until your legs screamed, tactics until your brain hurt, fights for ball possession, competition for every position, battles for coach approval, pressure from every direction. The boys didn't just want to succeed. They wanted to survive. Cristiano wanted more. He wanted to dominate. But every day felt like a war for survival. He was homesick, was bullied, was physically weaker, he was smaller, he missed his family, felt alone. But every evening, while the other boys rested, Cristiano trained. In his room, in the hallway, in the courtyard, anywhere. They laughed. Look at him. Obsessed boy. You'll never be better than us. Stop trying so hard. But he didn't hear them. All he heard was his mother's voice. You go, and you fight. A phone call that shattered him. 2 months into his stay, Cristiano reached his lowest point. One night, after a rough day, fights with teammates, homesickness, exhaustion, he called his mother. She answered with her usual warmth. How are you, meu filho? Cristiano broke. I want to come home, May. Please. I can't stay here. I miss you. I don't fit. Please come get me. Dolores later said hearing that was like being stabbed in the heart. But she didn't cry. She didn't panic. She didn't comfort him the way a mother naturally wants to. Instead, she said, "No, you are staying. You will not come home. You will stay there and fight. One day you will be the best in the world, but only if you stay." Cristiano sniffed, wiped his face, and whispered, "Okay, I'll stay." That call changed everything. It didn't make the pain go away, but it gave it purpose. The boy who refused to break. Cristiano Ronaldo didn't grow up in Madeira for nothing. He grew up running uphill. He grew up fighting bigger boys. He grew up in a modest home where nothing came easy. He grew up learning resilience the hard way. Sporting was his biggest challenge yet, but it would not defeat him. If he couldn't overpower boys physically, he'd outrun them. If he couldn't match their strength, he'd outwork them. If they mocked him, he'd silence them with goals. If they pushed him, he'd push twice as hard. If they underestimated him, good. Cristiano Ronaldo thrives on being underestimated, because that's when he becomes unstoppable, standing on the edge of transformation. This chapter was the storm. The next chapter is the lightning, because in chapter 9, everything changes. The bullying continues, the homesickness worsens, the pressure intensifies. But Cristiano transforms. He grows. He hardens. He evolves. And the entire academy soon realizes, this boy from Madeira isn't here to participate. He's here to take over. Just say, continue with chapter 9. You said, continue with chapter 9. ChatGPT said, absolutely. Here's chapter 9, continuing Cristiano Ronaldo's story at Sporting Lisbon with the same cinematic, emotional, and humorous style. This is the chapter where his transformation really begins. Chapter 9. The making of Cristiano Ronaldo. Struggle, resilience, and first glimpses of genius. Sporting Lisbon's academy wasn't a playground. It wasn't fun. It wasn't forgiving. It was a factory, a crucible designed to turn ordinary boys into professional footballers. And for Cristiano Ronaldo, it was exactly the kind of fire he needed to forge himself into a superstar. But in the beginning, the beginning was brutal. The bullying that could have broken him. At first, Cristiano was tiny. He was the Madeira kid. He had an accent. He had dreams bigger than most adults could even imagine. To some boys, that made him a target. He faced, teasing about his accent. Cromo da Ilha. Mockery for his size. Is that a boy or a twig? Sabotage during drills. Tripping him when coaches weren't looking, ridicule over his obsession with training. Do you sleep with the ball under your pillow too? Cristiano felt the sting of isolation. He felt the weight of expectation. He felt the loneliness of being different. But he refused to give in. Instead of responding with anger, he responded with action, with intensity, with work ethic, with goals, with a relentless determination that left everyone, eventually, speechless. The training that broke and built him. Sporting's training was more than running drills. It was war. Cristiano faced tactical sessions where coaches expected total comprehension and perfect execution, strength training, where his small frame had to fight for every centimeter of growth, endurance drills that left his lungs burning, his legs trembling, and his mind screaming, I can't. But he didn't quit. He couldn't quit. Instead, he stayed after every session, practicing free kicks until his foot went numb, running sprints until the other boys left in exhaustion, juggling the ball with one hand on the fence because the coach wasn't watching. Every night, his dorm room became a personal training ground. Every hallway became a gym. Every empty patch of grass was an opportunity. By the time the others slept, Cristiano's mind was already visualizing the next move, the next goal, the next impossible skill. The first taste of recognition. It didn't take long for coaches to notice. One day during a scrimmage, Cristiano dribbled past 3 defenders, nutmeg. The captain launched a shot from an impossible angle that hit the top corner of the goal. The ball seemed to obey him. The coach blew his whistle and paused the game. He walked over and said, quietly but firmly, you have something extraordinary. But talent isn't enough. You have to work harder than everyone else. Every day, every hour. Do you understand? Cristiano nodded. He didn't just understand. He already knew. That was the first time a coach saw not just a boy, but a future superstar. The pressure mounts. Homesickness, bullying, and intensity weren't the only challenges. Sporting Lisbon demanded results. Match after match, coaches expected goals, assists, dominance. Scouts from bigger clubs occasionally watched, adding invisible pressure. Every failure was magnified, every success barely noticed. Cristiano thrived in this pressure. He learned early that football was not just a game. It was a battlefield of persistence and obsession. Friendships born in the fire. Even amidst the loneliness, Cristiano found allies. Boys who shared his passion, boys who admired his work ethic, boys who respected his intensity. He didn't just want friends, he wanted partners in excellence. Together, they pushed each other, sprinting for extra laps, rehearsing skills, dreaming of a future beyond Lisbon. These friendships were rare, they were precious, and they would later help him endure the harshest phases of his career. The transformation begins. By the end of his first year, a change was noticeable. His frame began to strengthen, aided by his obsessive training and nutrition, which he took very seriously even at 12. His speed was terrifying, his dribbling was flawless for his age. His mentality shifted from "I hope I make it" to "I will make it." Coaches who had doubted him whispered to each other, "If he keeps this up, he'll go far." And Cristiano wasn't stopping, because he didn't know how to stop, because he refused to let anything, distance, bullying, homesickness, or fatigue, derail him. The first big break, a trial with the senior scouts. A turning point came when sporting scouts considered calling him for a trial with older youth teams. Cristiano's eyes sparkled. This was the first time he felt he was being seen as a real prospect, not just a talented boy from Madeira. He trained harder than ever, sprinting uphill, juggling while balancing on his toes, practicing shots from impossible angles. The trial was brutal. The opponents were bigger, stronger, and faster. But Cristiano wasn't intimidated. He dominated. He scored multiple goals. He dribbled past defenders effortlessly. By the end, the scouts were whispering, "We've got a special one, hey?" This was the first real validation of his lifelong obsession. The lesson of Chapter 9. Sporting Lisbon was more than a club. It was a challenge that forced Cristiano to grow. It was a crucible that tested his resilience. It was a storm that honed his skills. It was a home away from home where he learned sacrifice. Cristiano learned that talent alone is never enough. Passion without discipline is wasted. Desire without endurance is futile. Dreams without action are meaningless. And he also learned something else. No one will hand you greatness. You have to take it, with sweat, pain, obsession, and unwavering belief. By the end of this chapter, Cristiano Ronaldo had become more than a boy from Madeira. He was on his way to becoming the boy who would one day redefine football itself. If you want, I can continue with Chapter 10, where Cristiano faces intense teenage pressure, grows explosively in physical and technical ability, begins breaking records at youth levels, and becomes one of the most scouted young talents in Europe. Do you want me to continue with Chapter 10? You said, continue with Chapter 10. ChatGPT said, absolutely. Here's Chapter 10, continuing Cristiano Ronaldo's journey at Sporting Lisbon. This chapter focuses on the teenage years, intense growth, and the first signs of a superstar in the making. Chapter 10, the teenage metamorphosis, from talent to young phenomenon. Cristiano Ronaldo's teenage years at Sporting Lisbon were less a chapter and more a hurricane. The boy from Madeira was no longer the small island kid who trembled at the thought of leaving home. By now, he was transforming into a physical and mental powerhouse, the kind of player that made coaches stop mid-sentence, defenders panic, and scouts reach for their phones. This was the period where talent began to meet obsession, and obsession began to bend reality. Growing taller, stronger, faster, the body changes. Teenage growth spurts can be awkward, painful, and clumsy. Cristiano, he didn't just grow. He exploded. Legs lengthened with the kind of speed-enhancing leverage coaches dream about. Muscles hardened, sculpted by relentless training and determination. He gained coordination that made even bigger boys feel like they were chasing shadows. His sprinting became terrifyingly sudden, like a predator striking. But growth wasn't just physical. His footballing brain developed at a rapid pace. He could anticipate defenders' moves before they happened. He visualized passes and shots before receiving the ball. He executed tricks he had invented in his head with surgical precision. Coaches noticed something chillingly impressive. He's not just playing the game. He's seeing it before it happens. Even as a teenager, Cristiano was already thinking like a professional, while most of his peers were still figuring out homework. The rivalries that fueled him. Every academy has rivalries. At Sporting, Cristiano found resistance everywhere. Older players who wanted to assert dominance, teenagers jealous of his rapid rise, coaches who pushed him harder than anyone else. Cristiano loved it. Every challenge became fuel. Every insult, every tackle, every underestimation became a spark for improvement. One infamous rivalry involved a teammate who prided himself on strength. He tried to intimidate Cristiano on the pitch. Cristiano responded not with words, but with 15 minutes of relentless dribbling, scoring 2 goals and humiliating him after the match. The rival whispered to a friend, "That boy, he's insane. Not normal." And he wasn't. He was Cristiano Ronaldo. The first taste of stardom in the academy. By his mid-teens, Cristiano's talent was impossible to ignore. He was scoring record numbers of goals in youth leagues. Opponents began marking him with 2 or even 3 player scouts from top European clubs began showing up in Lisbon. Parents of other players whispered rumors. He'll be world-class. I saw it. His fame within Sporting was growing, but it came with pressure. Everyone expected him to deliver. Failure was no longer an option. Mistakes were magnified under the scrutiny of coaches and scouts. Cristiano thrived in pressure. Pressure didn't crush him. It sculpted him. Lifestyle changes, discipline beyond football. Teenagers are usually careless. Cristiano was anything but careless. He followed strict nutrition plans, long before it was trendy. He avoided distractions like video games and excessive partying. He dedicated his free time to practicing skills, running, and conditioning. Sleep became sacred because he understood its impact on recovery. Even at this age, Ronaldo treated every day like a professional season. A teammate recalled, he wasn't just obsessed with football. He was obsessed with being better than yesterday, in everything. Even in how he ate, slept, or ran. The first real injury, and the response that shocked everyone. No teenage athlete is without injury. Cristiano suffered one minor but painful setback. He twisted his ankle in a youth league match. Coaches expected him to rest. Ronaldo ignored instructions and returned to training within days. The medical staff protested. "You're 14. You're going to make it worse." Cristiano shrugged and said, "I can't stop. I need to train." This moment foreshadowed a mental toughness that would become legendary in his professional career. Pain was temporary. Improvement was permanent. The skills that started to define him. Teenage Cristiano wasn't just fast or strong. He was unique. Free kicks became a signature weapon. Dribbling was electrifying, unpredictable, and precise. His finishing was clinical, even under pressure. Headers. Despite not being the tallest at the time, he leaped with timing that baffled defenders. Creativity on the field was unmatched for his age. By 16, he was already performing like a professional, even though legally and physically he was still a boy. Recognition from the top, scouts, and national attention. Ronaldo's performances began catching attention beyond Sporting. Portugal's youth national team started monitoring him. Scouts from major European clubs such as Manchester United, Real Madrid, and Barcelona began taking notes. Coaches whispered that he could skip entire age groups if he continued like this. Even at 16, Cristiano was already on the radar of the global football world. The mental shift, dreaming bigger. By this stage, Cristiano's dream wasn't just to play professional football. He wanted to be the best in the world. He wanted to break records. He wanted to redefine the standards of athletic excellence. It was a mental transformation as much as a physical one. He no longer asked, "Can I make it?" Instead, he asked, "How can I be better than anyone else?" That mindset, more than any dribble or goal, became the defining feature of Cristiano Ronaldo. Chapter 10 Conclusion. The teenage supernova emerges. By the end of this chapter, Cristiano had transformed from a homesick island kid to a teenager ready for the world stage. He had faced bullying, homesickness, and intense pressure, and thrived. He had broken records at youth level, impressed scouts, and developed unparalleled discipline. He had cultivated a mental toughness that would carry him through the challenges of professional football. The boy from Madeira was no longer a secret. He was a supernova in the making, and the football world would soon have no choice but to notice.